Let's chat with Paul Gravett. Let's chat with Paul Gravett. No words out.
I think we got it.
Let's chat with Paul Gravett.
Wow, thanks. Well done to you. Great stuff. Well, not everybody gets a chat show named after them, so I'm Paul Gravett, as you might have gathered. And I'm delighted to be in competition with Tom Scoli here from the States. Your first time in the UK.
First time in the UK, yeah,
First
long
time.
overdue.
Yeah, Shame you're not here for a bit longer. You must come back.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, it'll give me something to come
What an
back for.
exclusive for MaccPow in its 10th year to have you. And I'm Paul Gravett, and I love comics in a kind of slightly insane, lifelong way, which some of you may also have experienced. And so we're going to have a chance to talk about your work, but also some of your personal work, the things you do which are solo creative, but also you've done quite a lot of other projects, including biographies of both Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, which are really, of course, major figures. Most of you in the audience, I can gather here, will probably know who we're talking about.
Might know one or two of them. Yeah.
Yes, more than likely, yes. And one of them in particular has, should we say, slightly more biographies and promotion than another.
Yeah, you can fill a bookcase.
You could easily.
With Stan Lee biographies.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom, we could do a bit of flashback, because I was wondering, I thought we might have had some kids here as well might want to come, but they're not here. We've got older kids, basically. But I mean, we know that comics usually is something that kind of imprints from a very early age. So I presume you would have had was there a kind of moment when when comics really entered your life and kind of filled it up, lit it up?
It would have been around the time, I'm part of that generation where I don't know a world without Star Wars. Star Wars is about as old as I am, those were the early ones that I'd just see the Star Wars comics, there'd be the little digest sized ones. Yeah. I think it was actually...
That's coming from the movies to the comics.
The movies to the comics, but the specific one that I remember, I think was a UK original. There were like UK Star Wars comics, I think, written by Archie Goodwin.
Realize that. That they had so much material, only had so much material to reprint from America.
Sure.
So you had to fill it with local stuff.
And so they did a collection of those. It's excellent stuff too. It's some of the best of that era of Star Wars comics, because again, it's, like you said, it's so early, and nobody really had a solid idea of what Star Wars was exactly. So Archie Goodwin wrote them. They were really, really nice comics, and that, I think that was the first one that registered for me.
I mean, in a way, for me, of course, I go back a bit earlier than you, but for me, several things. It was Hergé on TV, Hergé's Adventures of Tintin. I mean, that dates me, but I mean, at the time, it was like, what is this? And you discover the books through that. And then, of course, there was Batman.
Yeah, that too,
came
for
along.
sure.
So I'm a kid of the 60s and 70s, and that was like, and then you flew that. So often it is the media, not the comics, that you find.
I do wonder about that, again, because...
Oh, the other one was 5. Do you know what that is? Of course you do. Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds, oh yeah.
Which America barely understood, I think.
Right, I mean, I love all that, the Jerry Anderson puppet animation series, I love it, Supercar, all that stuff.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Yeah, but I mean, I actually grew up with that. And so you grew up on the Star Wars thing. But how did you then transition from that to discovering, okay, that's from a movie? What was the way into finding there was a bigger world of actual comics?
Yeah, it was the same with watching, like you said, the Batman TV series.
Right.
The Christopher Reeve Superman movies were still coming out at that time too. So that larger mass media thing did kind of point you in that direction, because I wanted more. I wanted to find out more about this stuff. And if you wanted to find out more about Superman or Batman, there's all of these comic books, and they were pretty easily available at that time.
Okay, and then when it comes to the Marvel universe, what was your entree there particularly?
Well, I mean, around that time, I also remember Howard the Duck. You'd see a lot of, it was before the Howard the Duck movie, but you'd see a lot of Howard this was very...
Well, there was a whole campaign for him to be president, wasn't there?
I think when Carter, he ran against Carter.
That was, so all kinds of ways of getting you to find the actual source material is the key point.
Yeah, sure, and another one was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, because they came with little comic books. So those were very early comic books for me. Yeah, and I loved, they were illustrated by Alfredo Alcala. They were beautiful comics, those early ones.
Stuff. Yeah, it's really, really good. So from there, from quite early on, were you also making comics?
Not necessarily making comics, but drawing.
Okay, so what you mean? So you're just drawing generally.
Drawing, single images.
Comics are difficult to make, aren't they? But
yeah,
you start off by designing characters or something, don't you?
I mean, but I don't know that I was necessarily thinking of it leading to comics. Actually, I was thinking of being George Lucas.
Of course.
So it was stage one was design your alien races and design your spaceships and things.
Of course, yes, you would.
That's what it was for me. Yeah. I was very intimidated by the idea of making a comic book. Again, it just seems like all these. How do you know what to put in all these boxes? So I probably wasn't in. It wasn't until I was in maybe 7th or 8th grade that I tried. Okay, I'm going to make a comic book now.
And what was that like?
Well, it's funny because my career sort of started doing retro comics, the sort of subgenre of retro comics. And when I was a kid, that's what I made. It was around the time of the Michael Keaton Batman movie. And I'd see these magazine articles and they'd show Bob Kane and Jerry Robinson and seeing that stuff. And I thought, oh, I want to make a comic like that. I want to make an old style comic. So that's what I did. I did an old style comic. It was called Space Guy. And the title was deliberately to seem kind of like Adam West Batman, to seem sort of satirical, but it was, I tried to do it in sort of an old style, and he's a superhero.
And where are we now when you're making that? You're still in school?
Yeah, 7th or 8th grade, something like that.
So did you show it around to people? I presume were you photocopying it or something?
No, not photo. Yeah, I wasn't that ahead of the game. Yeah, it really was just, I maybe showed it to a handful of people, and then I followed it up with a Star Trek The Next Generation, like my own version of Star Trek The Next Generation called Space Fleet. And there was a robot character that he was in the Space Navy, and he was Commodore 64 was his name.
Which, of course, as you might remember, was a make-up computer at the time.
Yeah,
right. There's a certain parallel. We are talking about to you, but I see lots of parallels of what I went through as well, and wanting to make my own superhero universe. And I made my own version of Thunderbirds, literally with cardboard boxes. We had 12 different machines, not 6. Who wants 5? There's too few. So 12. And then we're called torpedoes rather than Thunderbirds. And my dad was a home movie maker. We made a home movie of it, and it was really bad actually, but done with such a lot of love.
I could imagine that show being really inspiring because it does seem achievable.
It does.
It's puppets. You've got puppets.
Exactly.
You know, you could make a puppet.
Yeah, and you can make a cardboard box machine and make it and set fire to it. That was the important thing. We set fire to an airport in the garage. And filmed it, and that was the climax of the film.
What was the black and white one? Firebird XL, was that it?
Fireball XL5.
Fireball XL5, the black and white. That one's great.
With Steve Zodiac, And what about?
It feels like the Fantastic Four. It's got a similar feel.
It's got that similar vibe. It has, definitely. The one that really I love the theme tune especially was Stingray.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that?
I've never seen Stingray.
Oh my God, you got to look up that.
There was one in the 80s.
In Stingray, an entire block of, I don't know, offices or a base, Marineville, I think, goes underground when it's an emergency. You just think, I've never seen that. Yeah, it's just fantastic.
There was an 80s one too that I was the right age for because it was during the Star Wars era. I forget what it was called.
Was it UFO or Space 1999?
No, it was very much in the Star Wars. It was a post-Star
Wars.
Oh
yes.
I forget the name of it.
I remember.
It had like a little ball, a robot that was like a little ball with like the eyes and mouth.
Some of them know. Do you know what? Terrorhawks.
Terrorhawks. Okay.
That was obviously a bit post-peak.
Yeah, I would imagine that might be. It was more like for my exact age.
Yeah. So, is there a moment when Kirby in particular absolutely penetrated you and said, this is the art style I'm going to have to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, I knew Kirby, and I was a fan of Kirby's work before I identified him as a creator. I had the Thor Giant Treasury edition, and I just loved it. And to me, it was just like, oh. It's an old Marvel comic. It's Thor. If there was a name that resonated, it would have been Stan Lee.
Yeah.
Because I heard about him. Yeah. Jack Kirby's name was in there, but it didn't register. So, but it was one of my favorite comics as a child. And then
I'm seeing it especially when you're small. Those treasures are big anyway.
They're giant. Yeah,
but they're this kind of size, aren't they? Of course. But that's that impact of it being even bigger. It is knockout to see it at that scale.
Yeah, it fit the subject matter.
Yeah. And what was it about Kirby that particularly? Do you think had an impact on you?
I mean, it was the three-dimensional impact of the drawing. It was his design sense. I really liked that his ancient deities seemed equally of the ancient past and the far future.
Good point.
I hadn't seen it synthesized that perfectly before.
Because we know that Kirby was actually pretty, did a lot of reading, did a lot of studying of mythology, and also kept up with the latest scientific developments. I don't know about you, but I never come across DNA before Jimmy Olsen.
It was a very, very early mention of DNA in comics.
Pop culture.
Pop culture. You wouldn't have even seen it in a movie or a science fiction TV show at that time.
Did you get to meet Jack, in fact?
I never met Jack.
I imagine you must regret that.
By the time I really understood who he was, he had just passed. It was maybe a year or two after.
94, wasn't it? Of course. Yeah.
I did meet Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, of all people. So,
really?
Yeah.
And how was that?
They both were true to their reputation. Stan was very delightful and loquacious and energetic and funny, and then Ditko was standoffish and mostly silent.
But, I mean, you would have met Stanley, I imagine, at a convention.
At the elevator.
Ditko
we were both at the elevator.
Ditko didn't go to things like that.
He
so
did.
How did you meet sturdy but quite secretive Steve? Yeah.
Well, I'd made a couple trips to Brooklyn over the years, and the first time I went, I was with the late Ed Piskor, and he had this idea of, we're going to meet Steve Ditko. He knew people who had met Steve Ditko. He had the address, had all this stuff. He's like, we're going to go meet Steve Ditko.
Because that was the surreal thing, wasn't it? You could look up in the phone book. You could look up Ditko, S full stop, and there's only one of them. There's only one of them in there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Ditkos in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, an hour from where I live.
But there's only one in New York.
But there's only one in New York.
Yes.
And we didn't end up doing it. We had the whole plan ready to go. We didn't end up doing it. And then a year or two later, I was at Brooklyn by myself, and I had a day to kill. I had a day where I didn't have anything planned, so I thought, I had the whole plan already laid out from the last time. I said, I'm gonna go knock on Steve Ditko's office door and see what happens.
Wow.
So I got to do that and see what happens.
And did he open the door for the first time?
He opened the door, and I began to speak. I said, Mr. Ditko, and then he put up his finger. And then
he's been there before, I think.
He stepped out of the door, closed it behind him, and then started walking down the hallway. And I thought, is he going to take me to the Sanctum Sanctorum or whatever? But then he just kept walking and went right up the stairs. So that was that.
He wasn't going out then.
I think he has an office in that building, but I think he also has a living space in the same building. I knocked at the office. It was the office, but he was probably going back to his.
Oh, two different places.
Yeah, and the people that I had talked to who had met him a few years prior, it went very differently. But I think after the Jonathan Ross show came out, I think his office became a regular stop for people to knock on the door. And I guess somehow I thought it would register to him that, hey, I'm one of you. I'm a comics creator, but I think...
we didn't get past...
Yeah, I didn't get past that. And I think also it's the things that Steve Ditko probably likes the least are comics fans and hippies. And I think I just present as like a combination of the two. So it was kryptonite to him. He's like, I got to get out of here.
Right, I could imagine that. I remember when Jonathan Ross did the program In Search of Steve Ditko, I knew Jonathan at that time, and when I went over, he played back a little answer phone message, the voice of Steve Ditko was recorded saying he was, because I think Jonathan asked if he was pleased with the program. I don't really remember what Steve said. He wasn't.
I can imagine.
You can imagine. But he wasn't sort of ecstatic.
But I felt like I got the Steve Ditko experience. That was
that's what you get.
Happens when you meet Steve Ditko.
Yeah. Another remarkable creator.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, coming back to his centenary, and I think it's in 28, something like that. I think it's centenary, something like that. So we should come on to you making your own comics, because we will get to the biographies. We haven't got very much time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
But your path to making work yourself and getting discovered, this is the thing, did you self-publish? A lot of these people here, of course, you began with that route?
I began self-publishing, and I'd go to Kinko's. I don't know if you have Kinko's here. And I'd make
copy shop.
I'd make Xeroxes and staple them and sell them, and I still do that. There's projects that I do the same way.
With photocopies?
Full color full color, not photocopies, but still using the services of a
Okay,
copy.
yeah. Because I was just talking to someone today that, I mean, photocopying meant that zines were a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, you know, you can photocopy something, and if you want color, you hand color the covers.
Right.
You can do that, and each one's different. And now we have this thing where they're almost overproduced. I'm sorry, but isn't it? We're in a...
It's
and then
remarkable.
the risograph thing. It's lovely.
Risographs are beautiful.
But they are beautiful, but they're expensive, aren't they?
Well, you do it yourself, so you're not just paying for the supplies, you're also paying with your life.
I have a certain nostalgia for just the simplicity of xerography.
Yeah, it's got a look.
It's got a look, yeah.
When I did that, I could only imagine being able to do color comics. That seemed unachievable, but within 10 or so years, the technology caught up and it became very inexpensive.
Even easier. And then your discovery, your step from self-publishing to being discovered, what was who opened the door for you?
Peter Laird, who's the co-creator with Kevin Eastman of the Ninja Turtles, he started a grant specifically to help self-publishers.
Which was called Xeric, which was kind of short for
xerography, yeah. Yes. So I applied for that grant, got the grant, and then published my comic book, The Myth of Eight Opus, as a proper comic book. You know, I didn't have to staple it myself. And then distributed through Diamond Comics Distributors, which at the time was, you know, how you got your comics in stores. So that was really the start.
I respect at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Now it's a very weird time, aren't we?
Big shakeups are happening as we speak.
Happening.
Yeah, I haven't been able to check my phone in a while, so who knows?
It's more complicated than Secret Wars in a way, isn't it? The whole sort of lawsuits and more lawsuits and it's just insane. It's a very American approach to business.
I can imagine, yeah.
And from there, that meant that you were in print and in the stores.
In print and in stores. And Eric Larson from Image was sort of the next step. He had a big impact on my career too, because he took note of what I had done.
Yeah.
And again, I was coming from a Jack Kirby direction. I was writing stories in a Jack Kirby style and drawing in a Jack Kirby style. And he was a huge Jack Kirby fan, so he took notice of my work, and then he, you know, tried various ways to sort of help me get even more of a foothold in the industry, and then eventually he set me up with Joe Casey, and together we did Godland for Image Comics. That was a big breakthrough.
Yeah. And when it comes to Kirby and the influence, would you say that is there a particular era that you're particularly closer to, or do you? I mean, it's a very long career, of course.
It is a long career. I love every stage of it, but I do feel the closest connection to his 1970s work.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
It's when he's largely writing the
DC
words.
DC and Marvel in that period,
Exactly. The DC stuff and the Marvel. Maybe the DC stuff a little more. I think they're both wonderful, but the DC, there was an exuberance because he had just sort of freed himself from Marvel and sort of having to work exclusively with Stan Lee, and so he was finally able to...
And he was getting the full credit as writer and artist and editor, wasn't he, too?
Yeah.
And we know he kept quite a lot of ideas back at that time, didn't he?
Yes, he held back, and then the dams opened.
Marvel could have had that stuff.
They could have.
If they could have changed the deal and made it worth just rewarding him for what he was really doing.
It's an interesting what if, but I think the work was served by being a fresh start, as opposed to Orion and Darkseid being guest stars of an issue of Fantastic Four or something. However, they would have introduced it there.
To be their own thing. Yeah, exactly. And for Kirby, the issue of creators' ownership of course comes up in both of your biographies. That's a very tricky territory to navigate because you're going from two perspectives. Tell us how you approach taking Kirby's. Well, you didn't take sides exactly, but how do you do that to be fair to both?
Yeah, I mean, I worked really hard to be as factually accurate as possible.
Right. That's not so much fair as factual.
Yes, and within that, though, each book is the point of view is the point of view of that person. So the Jack Kirby book is written from the point of view of Jack Kirby, and the Stan Lee book is written from the point of view of Stan Lee.
Right, that makes sense. So in that sense, it's almost like first person rather than third person.
Yes, that was a device that helped sort of make that stuff run a little more smoothly.
Was it always envisaged that you would do both, or was that a surprise?
Not by me,
No.
maybe by my publisher, because after I finished the Jack Kirby book, immediately they wanted a Stan Lee book, and I said I can't do that. Like I did a biography. You know, I think I'm ready for something different, but they really wanted
change the genre. You mean,
yeah, the genre, and they really wanted a Stan Lee book, and I couldn't even imagine how I'd do it. And then a few years later, I guess it had been sort of, the wheel had been turning in the back of my mind, and I had an idea of how to do a Stan Lee biography that would not be redundant with a Jack Kirby, that would be a completely different, done in a completely different style, and an approach that I thought, okay, I can do a book like this.
And your approach was to take essentially it's a lot of one-page glimpses and key moments, isn't it, that you've done?
It moves fast.
It has a lot to cover, of course, anyway, with Lee's career, And then you've got footnotes. I think I found just occasionally that there were references. I know a fair bit about it, but there were one or two people I don't know who this is. And I find it a bit difficult to find out how do I find out who this person is? Because sometimes Lee only talks to someone with a first name. Right. And if you don't know who that first name is, I know Neil is Neil Adams, for example. But if you have some feedback on that, that sometimes could it have been? How do you do that? How do you make it accessible to an audience that isn't quite as geeky as we are?
Yeah, I think the
you don't mind me saying that, but
the approach, it moved so fast. I felt that it's just sort of an engaging entertainment.
You don't have to know.
When you see a movie, you don't need to know the backstory of each person, or even who exactly each person is. Right. But somebody who is familiar with that stuff can know it. But I feel it works in a similar way. And there was somebody who was doing a David Bowie documentary around the same time.
As in a comic, you mean? Or?
Oh no, it was a David Bowie film biography.
Oh yeah.
I think it was called Moon Age Daydream.
Okay.
And he was talking about his approach to David Bowie, and I thought, wow, that's exactly how I've been thinking about Stan Lee.
Right, good. Yeah, excellent. No, so your other big project for Marvel Comics, that was you've done some things for Marvel before, I think, but to do the whole overview under this interesting term, sole authorship tradition. In the sole authorship tradition, what is the sole authorship tradition? Because as far as I'm concerned, Marvel doesn't have a sole authorship tradition.
It doesn't have a soul, and it doesn't have authorship.
Both spellings, because Jim Steranko was a sole author, but he struggled
you have to fight. Yeah, you have to push back because the system
it's meant to be
is designed.
Writer, artist, and then lots of other people doing the rest of it. Yeah. So,
and this is a very rare instance of that in Marvel's history. Although it had kind of these grand design books. I feel like had sort of opened the door. There have been more sole author things.
They're allowing people to create sort of very personal versions of characters, haven't they?
Yeah.
They really have opened it out. But the concept here is, for me, is a bit brain melting because you're taking this bigger, wider perspective on these fictional tapestries, as they're so called, which of course are huge collaborations where there isn't a grand design.
But the idea is to pretend.
Yes.
Imagine that there is one, or in my case, just take a look at this giant body of work and just try to think, what story is this body of work trying to tell me? What is this collective thing that's been cobbled together? What unifies it?
And this is possible, obviously, particularly in Marvel, because of the whole idea of continuity, it all being connected. But also, I would say, with in this case, with Fantastic Four, Kirby often was working on related things which didn't always perhaps fully develop in the comics, but he's kind of planted the seeds of lots of things that you can join up.
That's exactly it. Planting seeds, and in some cases he got to see those seeds to full flower and bearing fruit, and then in some cases he didn't. So I tried as many of those seeds that he didn't get to stick around for. I tried to find ways to fold those back in, because that's what I wanted as a fan. As a fan of the Fantastic Four, you read those Jack Kirby and Stan Lee issues, and they introduce Wyatt Wingfoot. They introduce
what happened to him.
Exactly. And it's like, wow, this guy's really important, and you can tell this is going somewhere.
Yeah.
He's got
And
to
it doesn't
see,
go
and it
anywhere,
doesn't.
does
It
it?
doesn't. So
No,
I tried
no.
to Prester
Because
John.
he was a Native American character, wasn't he? That,
Yeah.
I don't know. Has anything been done with Wyatt Wingfoot?
I imagine
Probably,
somebody
but
has
I mean,
done something with him, but
And
the
Prester John stuff's extraordinary too. Yeah.
so promising.
Yeah. All waiting to be untapped by someone, perhaps.
And as a fan, it was frustrating because
Yeah.
I thought, when's it? But you read enough comics and you realize that's just superhero comics.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a perfect tied together ending or an M. Night Shyamalan
And you
surprise
can't get
twist.
your head around the whole thing. You'll have trouble ever getting it into
Yeah.
your head to make sense of it all. But you've done a tremendous job with that.
Oh, thanks. That was the
Yeah.
big challenge, though, was making sense of this gigantic event. And it kept shrinking, too. At first, they said, you'll have 4 issues to do it, then 3 issues, then 2.
Yeah.
So this comic goes at light speed because I had to...
I wonder why it was super dense.
Very dense, yeah.
What was
the
why
densest
did they
comic I've
cut back
ever
on that? Because did Ed and have more for his?
Yeah, he had 3.
Okay, his X-Men one.
Yeah, or no, he had 6.
That's what
He
I
had
thought.
6 because each one was 2, so
Yeah.
he had 6. I was going to have 4. It was going to be a gradual stepping down, but then it just became okay. You got 2, and then that became the model. Jim had 2 for Jim
for
Rugg
the
had 2
Hulk,
for his
yeah.
Hulk one also.
Are they doing any more of these?
not
In the
that I-
grand sole authorship tradition, which we seem to have forgotten about.
Yeah, maybe there's not enough sole authors.
Or maybe
but,
somebody mad enough to want to try and do Spider-Man, I suppose would be the obvious
I'd
one
love
try
to
and do.
see. I'd love to see more of them.
Would you do another one?
In a heartbeat. You know what? When I did the Fantastic Four, I thought, this is my
Never
Fantastic.
again.
Right. I'm going to say everything I have to say about the Fantastic Four, and then I'll never have anything to do with them again. And as soon as I finished it, all of these ideas, all of these ways to
stuff that
like
could have been in
completely
there.
reinvent. Well, not. Again, there was no room for anything else.
No.
But where to go next?
Right,
So
right.
I never thought that would happen. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I could do Fantastic Four comic books forever. So.
We've got to ask you about the movie.
Okay.
Are you excited about it?
I'm excited about it.
Does it look promising?
It does look promising. There's positives and negatives that I perceive. But again, we're just going by a trailer. So
Yeah.
who knows what the finished product is going to be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of speculation, a lot of wondering what it's going to be. But we'll get an answer pretty soon, and it'll either be sort of wonderful and we'll love it, or it'll not, and we won't hear about the Fantastic Four for another 10, 15 years.
Oh, they'll try it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have all the kind of intimations. It seems like it might just click.
They have
this
the
time. It
design
might just click.
sense is smart. Having Galactus in his full form is
Well, yeah.
smart. A lot of smart decisions being made on it, I think.
We have a little tiny window of time for some questions, but hardly any time. But is anybody burning to ask a question? Because we had to start at 1:05, I would point out. And we had my theme tune, which took up so much time.
Took up 13 minutes, right?
It's all your fault. But is anybody burning to ask a question here? Yes, there is. There you are. With a Fantastic Four t-shirt on, you've got to ask a
Perfect,
question.
yeah.
Come on.
What was it like working with Joe Casey on Godland?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first time I worked with a writer, worked with somebody else, and yeah, it was great. We were trying to mimic the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, or at least our imagined idea of the way they worked together. We tried to mimic that, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And
So you were plotting together and not listening to each other? No.
Every imaginable, but it was our imagined
And you went
version.
off and did the panels with notes in the book, that Kirby approach?
Somewhat, yeah.
Somewhat,
More or less.
yeah,
There was
yeah.
a lot of phone calls. And,
Great.
and
So real
back and
collaborative.
forth, and yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And what's your urgent project right now? Are you on deadline for something?
I'm on deadline right now for the Twilight Zone. I'm doing a Twilight Zone comic book. And I also was...
And these are new stories, presumably.
a new story. I've come up with a Twilight Zone story to add to the body of Twilight Zone. I was going to say great Twilight Zone stories. Hopefully it's somewhere in the neighborhood of that. And then I just finished a massive original graphic novel called Space Opera Xanadax Across the Unknown Dimensions of the Galaxy for Image Comics.
We'll call it Space Opera Xanadax, I think.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want to get it confused with the other
Of course, there's
Space
so many
Opera
more
Xanadax.
Space Opera
Yeah.
Xanadaxes. Yeah. And who's that going to? Is that Image?
That's Image also.
Okay. And how huge is huge?
The book itself is 224 pages.
Whoa.
The story is shorter than that. I also have another story as a sort of a backup story called Princess, which is a comic I had done a bunch of years ago and is now finally going to get printed as a little bonus at the end of that.
And when is that due?
It's in August. It'll be out.
Excellent. That's very exciting news. Look out for that. So we have to wrap up. So we could have talked for another couple of hours, couldn't we? But thank you for coming along, and big thanks to Tom Scoli for coming over for the first time to the UK. Thank you. Really good, really good. Thank you.
Let's chat